Namaste everyone. We will explore today the borderline personality disorder. It is a disorder that keeps everyone on the edge. The borderline personality is an eruptive, turbulent, and highly emotional personality. To discuss the subject today, we have with us psychoanalysis consultant Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, can we start with what borderline personality disorder is all about?
It is one of the most difficult disorders to treat, and it is also found in a large number of people. Ironically, most people believe that there is a gender aspect to this disorder. It is not gender neutral, that is how most people believe it to be. It is found more in females and less in males. And there is a history, especially with regard to the word borderline. Because initially, a few years, not initially, but till a few years back, the terminology which was used in the area of mental health was to divide the human population into three categories: the normal, the neurotic, and the psychotic. So all psychological problems were divided into two: the neurotic and the psychotic. And there were some people who were in between. For some time they would be neurotic, and for a small fraction of time they would display some psychotic features. And this group was referred to as the borderline group originally. Later on, the terminology of neurotic and psychotic was given up. Psychosis still continues to be a used word, but that old classification of normal, neurotic, psychotic, that has gone away, and therefore the borderline personality disorder that we are discussing today is essentially a personality disorder of lack of stability. It's a problem of stability. The instability is on account of mood. Instability is on account of emptiness. There is an element of eruptiveness. There is a feeling of being abandoned, and there are dramatic gestures to uh, avoid the perceived abandonment or to get attention. And there is a very turbulent life in the realm of interpersonal relationships. In those relationships, idealization and de-idealization occur in a very turbulent, toggling way. One occurs and then after some time the other occurs. And therefore, there are rapid creation, there is a rapid creation and a rapid destruction of interpersonal relationships. There is also a marked degree of impulsiveness and lot of attention seeking and sort of empty threats and gestures of committing suicide or harming oneself or doing something dramatic to get one's way out or to just get attention, affection, and sympathy. And this essentially is a disorder which takes quite a long time and intense effort on part of the patient and the therapist both for healing to occur. So this is something which is a very disturbing disorder to the person and to those who are in touch with the person, either in relationships or as caregivers. So this is what the borderline personality disorder is all about. It always keeps you on the borderline, on the edge. You never know what that person is going to erupt into or what dramatic scenes are going to follow.
Right. So I'm wondering what is the psychoanalytical explanation of causation of this disorder?
Psychoanalysis explains this in a variety of ways. So we have to look at the instability, we have to look at emptiness, we have to look at impulsiveness, and we have to look at attention seeking dramatization. So all the four characteristics are there. And the psychoanalytic explanations are essentially centered around one, in some people it may be a learned borderline uh, character, in the sense they saw their parents who were themselves borderline, they grew up looking at borderline people and internalized what they saw. Like everyone else learns from the parents, they just learned from their parents what they saw. This may be one small group. Another small group would be where unless they did something dramatic, they were not heard. Two, the impulsiveness control was never taught to them. So they could get away with their impulsiveness and they saw their parents also to be impulsive. So this would be uh, 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 one group where it is learned from the behavior of the parents. Second is where parents taught them certain things. For example, the mother teaching the daughter that unless you go dramatic, you cannot have your way. So it may be an overt learning or it may be an unconscious covert learning, but one group will be that group which has learned it from the parents in overt way or in a covert way.
Okay.
There is a second group which actually has experienced object loss, and this I think is the really major group. The group which has experienced early life object loss. And that early life object loss did not allow them to internalize a good, reliable, stable object. And because they could not internalize a good, reliable, stable object, they experienced inability to maintain stability.
Right.
Because they never internalized a stable object. So they could not uh, practice stability in a deeper intrapsychic sense of the term because there is no stable soothing object inside.
Okay.
Second, because they were not able to internalize a good, reliable, stable object, that vacuum and the emptiness always remains. And occasionally that emptiness activates. Then is the question of impulsivity, which also is related to not having a stabilizing internal object. So when the desire comes, it just passes through without regulatory mechanism working on the desire adequately. Because there is no stabilizing object inside. And therefore, the absence of the good stabilizing object inside creates that deficiency in the regulatory system, which is not able to regulate desires and impulses as they emerge.
Right.
The abandonment also brings in the histrionic element into the person, where there is a rapid fire change of relationships and doing something dramatic. This is an element which the borderline in a micro way shares with the histrionic. That they will do something dramatic to get attention, affection, sympathy. And they will also have very rapid fire creation and destruction of relationships. There is also a fear of emotional closeness. So many times the borderline person will find a stable person on the other side, but before that person gets close, this person starts fearing abandonment and preempts that abandonment by the other by abandoning that person oneself.
Okay.
So in order to prevent the repeat of childhood abandonment in real life, they themselves engineer abandonment in relationships. So either they would abandon or they would create situations where the other has no choice but to abandon. And one more element is of very fragile ego. So there is a constant disintegration and reintegration of the ego always going on. And any disintegration of the ego under the smallest of stresses disrupts that whole equilibrium and regulatory mechanism, and the whole eruptive, empty, attention seeking, histrionic, dramatic part comes out. And therefore, there is one more cohesion explanation that it is the faulty self which has been created. Instead of a healthy self, a borderline self has got created.
Mm-hmm.
And this has low ego cohesion. And because of low ego cohesion, under the smallest of stress from inside or outside, disintegration takes place. And the moment disintegration happens, the regulatory mechanism, which is otherwise regulating well the impulses, the emptiness, the feeling of abandonment, that regulatory mechanism is thrown off, and the early life experience of turbulence, lack of stability, abandonment, emptiness, rage, all of that comes out. Because we also see here a very important dynamic of eruptive rage.
Mm-hmm.
There is an eruptive rage against abandonment. There is an eruptive rage against non-availability of stable, loving parents.
Okay.
There is also an eruptive rage against shaming parents or shaming authority figures. So if the person does not find good authority figures in the schools or in the colleges or at work, and the early life parents were also hypercritical and unstable, that sorts of feeds again into the borderline personality disorder. So these are some of the explanations. The ISTDT explanation, of course, would be to say there would be something like the sadness, rage, and guilt which would be inside. And the rage and the anxiety because of the rage would be the factors which don't allow stability to settle in.
Right, right.
So we have a variety of explanations, and two other explanations are: one is the unconscious hope and despair at gaining the Oedipal object or losing the Oedipal object. That also, from a Freudian point of view, can feed into the borderline turbulence.
Okay.
The unconscious hope and despair about gaining or losing the Oedipal object. Similarly, the unconscious hope or despair related to gaining or losing the good breast
Mm-hmm.
also can bring in the turbulence. So these are some of the explanations. Winnicott, of course, had a different take. He said essentially this has to do with good enough mothering. If the good enough mothering was there, the person would have internalized the goodness of the mother, the stability of the mother, the containing capacity and the processing capacity of the mother. Because one of the elements in borderline also is very low containing capacity, and the buckets are overflowing because the schemas inside are continuously generating difficult material. So these are some of the psychoanalytic explanations for the causation of borderline personality disorders as it stands today.
Right. And how does psychoanalysis proceed with healing of this personality disorder?
Essentially, it is a long-term process.
Okay.
Nobody expects any personality disorder, for that matter, to be quickly healed.
Mm-hmm.
And we are essentially looking at least twice a week or thrice a week for 2 years. And we have to start cohesion to create a safe space and allow the person with borderline personality disorder to feel safe. Direct interpretation can not only make it very difficult for the person to bear therapy, it can also often result in person ejecting out of therapy.
Okay.
Because the interpretation, what it releases inside, may be unbearable for the person. The person has very low containing capacity, and the fleet by and large is open, and therefore any interpretation slightly strong can easily be seen as persecuting.
Mm-hmm.
Another important point is we have to be very careful about the uh, fragile, extremely both. I mean, borderline always is fragile, but we have to be careful about the less fragile and more fragile borderline personalities. With regard to more fragile borderline personalities, even a cohesion frame may not be enough, and we would have to go to the uh, extremely supportive and non-interpretative form of therapy,
Right.
or you can call it extreme cohesion stance if you want to, but we have to be very careful with fragile borderline because for many of them, the very frame of psychoanalytic psychotherapy may be too much. And therefore, in the extremely fragile borderline, the moment they get into psychoanalytic psychotherapy, even of the supportive time, even of the cohesion time, often you see the ego disintegrates.
Mm-hmm.
And there is more disintegration of ego than development of the ego stream.
Right.
And this category of patients, many people have said, should not be given psychoanalytic psychotherapy. They should be given first face to face supportive therapy for quite some time before they can get on the couch, because on the couch, many of them will face extreme problems of disintegration. And therefore, more psychotic type symptoms will emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And the person may feel worse after the session or after the therapy.
Okay.
So this will be one extremely fragile uh, group of the borderline where we may have to start with a supportive face to face and then go to the classical psychoanalytic couch and continue supportive for a very long time before the interpretative work can start.
Right.
Then we have the moderately fragile where a cohesion uh, approach is enough, followed by later on whatever school we have to follow given the pathogenesis of the person. And for the highly functioning borderline, which in Kohut's view borders on the narcissistic
Mm-hmm.
in terms of ego cohesion, not in terms of DSM traits, but in terms of ego cohesion. And for that particular category, the cohesion part can be shorter, and one can go into the other more analytical kind of eclectic analytic type of psychoanalytic psychotherapy.
Right.
The psychoanalytic work has to be complemented by other factors.
Mm-hmm.
DBT is a very good uh, way to complement our psychoanalytic work because it combines CBT tools and Eastern tools of mindfulness and relaxation.
Okay.
So DBT combined with psychoanalytic psychotherapy is a good combo for this particular form of disorders, and the person has to do a lot of self work. Otherwise, the generation of insights in therapy does not lead to any change.
Mm-hmm.
We just keep repeating it and very small changes happen. So converting the insights into action requires self work by the person,
Right.
and therefore not only this, but in all personality disorders, that CBT tool of asking the person to do self work is very essential. In this disorder also it is very essential.
Okay.
So this is the broad frame of healing, and we also need to put in certain holistic healing tools to get better results and quicker relief.
And holistic healing, something we hear today all the time. Is there a way holistic healing approach can help in healing of this personality disorder?
Yes, it very much so, because we are dealing here with lot of turbulence and anxiety,
Okay.
and therefore very important element is to give relaxation to the person.
Right.
Holistic healing tools like Reiki, pranic healing, uh, certain breathing techniques, meditation techniques, uh, breath observational techniques, certain homeopathic medicines, they are all very good elements to calm down the person and provide the person relaxation.
Okay.
Music therapy, certain types of breathing, certain patterns of breathing, all of them are very good relaxation providers to calm down the turbulence and the anxiety. And the
Right.
moment you give this without using tranquilizers or anti-anxiety medications, without any side effects, the person experiences relief and experiences happiness, because the constant agitation, irritation, turmoil is calm for a moment.
Okay.
And the person not only experiences a good psychological state, he is able to put this in the memory as one of the strong components of the goal state he wants to reach.
Right. Right.
And that in turn becomes a very good motivator, because he knows this is how 24 hours should be.
Okay.
And that experiential exploration and experiential introduction to that goal state, or at least a part of the goal state, is very important motivator and awareness and insight generator for the person.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have getting along with others, social support groups, as well as certain social work organizations. They offer a very good chance to practice what we say.
Right.
So in the organizational commercial setup, stakes may be very high, and the punitive repercussions may be very high. But in a more supportive social environments of the non-profit type, it is easier and less uh, punitive if one goes wrong to practice out the insights you gain in therapy and put the insights into action.
Mm-hmm.
So holistic healing is a very good layer to be added to borderline personality disorders. I would say it is actually a must layer.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been proven again and again, especially now with DBT gaining so much of acceptance, that a combo of Eastern and Western tools gives us much better results than using only one basket of tools.
Mm-hmm. So, how is the patient education important in the context of this disorder?
Uh, the person has to know first what is the difficulty with him. Once you list out that these are the difficulties, the person cannot pass them off as just being different. He has to realize that these difficulties cause impairment, and therefore this is a sickness. This is not being unique or different.
Right. Right.
So first is recognition of all the characteristics of sickness one is showing. So nothing passes off as innocent or just being a unique personality. Two, the price of the price that you pay for these characteristics. Three, after knowing the price, the person naturally turns ego dystonic.
Mm-hmm.
Two, the sickness. The sickness becomes ego dystonic. And that is very important. The sickness has to become ego distorted. You cannot change what you love. So you have to stop loving the sick part of yourself.
Mhm.
Then how it has developed. So the do's and don'ts. What helps the person in healing and what aggravates this problem. Then what are the situations one would like to do better in and do some sort of self-work. Finding out certain holistic healing tools which are scientifically validated. Not the quack kind of work, but scientifically validated holistic tools.
Right.
And getting into good, well-educated and supportive scientific social support groups as well as social work organizations. When we do the uh, psychoeducation of the person is able to do all these things better. The
Mhm.
person also realizes what to report to the healer on what is working and not working, or what is aggravating it acutely. So therapy can be rightly focused. If medication is there, it is rightly focused.
Right. Right.
And lastly, what best the person can do to minimize the outcomes and the suffering that his sickness causes on his occupation, his relationships, and people who are near to him. Because every personality disorder has a social cost.
Mhm.
Cost to the person himself and cost to the people around him.
Okay.
And therefore, one has to work out how one can minimize this social cost to
Mhm.
oneself and to others.
Mhm.
So all of this can be well done more efficiently in a more accelerated way if we do right and adequate amount of psychoeducation of the patient.
Right. And I'm thinking, what should the family members of caregivers do if they are helping someone with this disorder?
First, they have to be given psychoeducation as to what the problem is all about. We have to tell them that this is not something the person is faking. This is also not something the person can make go away by using his willpower. The roots of this sickness are far deeper in the unconscious. It is not something which using the willpower you can just make it go away in a week's time.
Right.
So once you communicate the seriousness of this and the necessity of long-term work where they also have a crucial part to play, the whole situation for the patient changes.
Okay.
Otherwise, the patient is fighting his family members even to do the healing process he has to do on himself.
Mhm.
And often the family members, knowingly or unknowingly, aggravate the situation for him
Right. Right.
because they don't know what are the do's and don'ts for this particular problem. So the first is the parents have to be told what is this problem all about. Two, that it is not a question of willpower or changing the habits. It is not something so superficial. This is deeply rooted and requires long-term work.
Right. Right.
Third, they can then monitor what is working or not working on the person in terms of healing and report to the healer when something aggravates or something heals very well. So that the healer knows that the third party information he is getting on what he has practiced and how it is working or not working. Fourth, they have to support the patient in terms of time, energy, and cost. Because healing any personality disorder requires enormous amount of cost, energy, and time. And that investment has to be made. There is no way out. The only option is to pay the price of sickness.
Mhm.
Therefore, without persecuting the person, without getting critical about the person, they have to be positive and supportive of the healing efforts. Because the energy, time, and money the person puts into healing, obviously that is the amount he cannot give to the family because that's going for healing.
Right.
So the family has to be supportive about this. Then they have to know the do's and don'ts. And they have to help the person find out right social support groups, right holistic healing groups, right social work groups, and very importantly, when the person practices holistic healing, not to criticize him or shame him, but to encourage him. Because many people stop holistic healing measures at home because somebody laughs at them or mocks them or criticizes them or persecutes them or shames them.
Right, right.
So this support and positive encouragement is very necessary so that the person is peacefully able to practice holistic healing practices at home and accelerate his healing and also get relief quickly to enhance his quality of life as fast as possible. Often the family members aggravate the situation so much that the rage that the person develops, which often is not expressed fully, becomes self-destructive, and in an unconscious way, the person aggravates his own sickness. Because the anger towards the parents who are mocking at him or not supporting him in the healing process. So that's a double whammy on the healing process. One, it does not happen, and two, it's not happening leads to a lot of rage which is repressed, which becomes self-destructive and further flames the difficulty.
Right, right.
And lastly, the parents have to be robust enough, and if they are not robust enough, they can seek help. And all of this is possible when you psychoeducate them that in the course of this long-term treatment, they should not develop secondary problems of anger or anxiety or shame or something of that sort.
Right, right.
So that in the process of caregiving, they don't develop themselves as new patients. And if they see some signs, they can immediately seek help or support or counseling and overcome that problem.
Right, right.
So all of this can be done scientifically, efficiently, in a more humane way and a holistic way if we psychoeducate the parents in the right way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya, for sharing your knowledge with us. We have covered borderline personality disorder. In the subsequent videos, we will be covering other disorders from DSM-5 in the same way. Do watch our coming videos and write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.